Welcome to the Reschool'd podcast, the show that discusses all the things that schools may have missed, with your hosts, AJ Kuti and Jason Gordon. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. We are the Reschool'd podcast, the show that discusses all the things that schools may not have prepared you for. As always, I am AJ, and sitting across from me, Jason. Jason, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. Can't complain. You know, it's that time of year where we're about to start school back again for another semester. So, excited, getting ramped up. How about you?
I'm dying right now. I have a final paper that I'm trying to write. And of all the things from this podcast that we've talked about of how to become a better student and do things correctly and get the most out of it, the one thing I didn't do this semester and last semester, but more so this semester, is I waited to the last minute to get this paper done. And I started on it Monday, and it's due next Thursday. So I got about a week and a half. Well, now I got about a week to go. But he lets us submit it in early, probably by Friday. So he'll do a first draft review of it, tell us what's wrong so we can correct it. And it's just, I am losing my mind over here. Not too long ago, we just came back from vacation. I didn't get squat accomplished then. And then now having to do this. And then I realized too that my semester as a student ends next Friday. My semester teaching begins the following Monday. So I have roughly a weekend to get everything prepared for that class.
Oh, wow.
So it's a fun time for me.
Yeah, you were drowning, man. Good luck.
Yeah, I am.
See, guys, it's out there, whoever's listening, if you're a student, you're going to be a student. It's not just you. It's everybody.
Oh, God, no.
We all have our deadlines. We all put things off type thing. Hopefully we can teach you how to manage that a little better. Hopefully.
Just don't follow my procedure here.
Well, what you want to talk about today?
I think we talked about this a little bit before, and I think this is a good topic. We're going back to the general career series, and this one's dealing with how companies hire. That's one of the things right now is the hiring process, whether the listeners are coming out of college, so they're getting into the hiring process, or they're going through college, so they kind of need to understand how the hiring process works. So once they get there, or it could be somebody who has already got out of college and they're just looking for a different career or different company to work for. I don't know. But I think it's really, really important for us to talk about how companies do hire.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the hiring market is kind of crazy right now, too. And by the looks of things in the economy, things are about to shift just a little bit. So understanding the general landscape, that's going to be good. Before we jump in, though, everybody visit Reschool'd.com. Check us out on the social media profiles, particularly on the website. You can send us messages, let us know what you want to hear about, give us ideas for topics, that type of thing. If you got a particular shout out, we'll actually mention it in the episode. So there you go. You can do that too. And of course, favorite podcasting platforms, right? Give us all the stars you can give us. There you go.
Yeah, aren't the stars free, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to pay for them. You just give them out freely.
See, that is just a gift that you could give to us out of the goodness of your heart. It's the
gift that keeps on giving. Quick question of the day. How did you go about getting your first professional job?
Well, honestly, I didn't have my first professional job, I would say, until I got to law school. I mean, I was a professor's assistant a little bit in college, but mainly I did waiting tables, a little bit of bartending, and some banquet setup and stuff like that in hotels. But when it came to professional services job in law school, I landed a job as a law clerk at a small law firm, basically through a guy I knew. I mean, he was the clerk there. He was moving on to another job. He told me about the job, and like we'll probably talk about this episode, I was the only one interviewed. I was the one hired, right? And, I actually, believe it or not, I left that job after about a year and went to another job at a Fortune 500 company. And true to form, what we'll talk about today, I got that job pretty much the same way, right? Not networking, but following more of the internship process that we'll talk about as we get into it. But anyway, that's me. So what about you?
I'm not even really sure. I honestly, I look back now, and I was trying to figure out. So my first professional job is my teaching job. Like I just came out of college and went right into teaching. And so I didn't think nothing about it, but I was feeding my resume out, and honestly, when I look back, I'm trying to remember if I sent my resume or my CV, and applied for a position. I mean, I'm sure I did. I just cannot remember doing it for this college. I remember there was a couple colleges that I applied for, in the Atlanta area, and I'm sure like I said, I'm sure I did. And this one actually came from me starting as an adjunct. Mm-hmm. So I did 2 semesters as an adjunct before I was brought in full time, and it was just one of those things that the opportunity presented itself. It was a good college, and as you know, some of the listeners probably don't know. Most of the listeners probably don't know, but our college is fairly new, especially relative to other colleges. I mean, I think we've only been around for 16 years, maybe.
Mm-hmm. That's it.
And the way the structure, the way it was structured in creation of the college, it was really intriguing to me. It's not something that you really see a lot out there. We're a non-tenure track college. We don't have, as of right now, we don't have quote unquote like business buildings, science buildings. Mm-hmm. We have intermingled professors, offices, so you can get kind of this collaboration between different departments. And it's a really cool dynamic. And one of the things that set out to me was, when I was in the interview process, they said, you don't have to follow the ivy on the walls because our paint's still drying. We don't even have ivy. The paint's still drying. And I thought that's really cool. Like you get to create almost your own tradition. And so that's why I chose the college, but I just found it online. Like I just searched faculty positions on various websites, and there are some websites that are specific to university and college faculty positions that are open. So that's how I got mine.
So you were in a very niche industry. Obviously, I fell into it a little bit later on, but so I think one thing we can talk about today is the different ways and means and methods. I know we titled this thing "How Small and Large Companies Hire." But we could probably break it down a little bit further into some specific industry stuff. So that'll be worth mentioning as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's get into it. Are you good?
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. Didn't mean to jump in.
No, you're good. Let's start with the first question. And is just the simple, basic, straightforward question of how do companies hire?
Well, so what we're talking about here is mainly private market. Right? You're going to have your niche stuff with federal government, state government, and your specialty industry stuff in there, right? There's always going to be some closed industry stuff. You want to get into music or entertainment or fashion, well, that's a closed industry, period. You want to get into the federal government, things are going to be listed through, USA Jobs, for example, right? That's where they list all federal jobs. States have their own state listing, local government the same way, and usually they fall under state law for listing and stuff. But what we need to focus on is the private sector, small business, large private business, and then you're going to get a mixture there in between with medium-sized business, the way that they go about hiring, the way they go about bringing in new employees into the company. Because every company's going to have attrition, right? People are going to leave, they're going to retire type thing. Lots of companies are going to grow and have more demand for employees and things like that. Sometimes you're going to get an economic swing back. Like, a lot of companies here in the U.S. downsize like crazy during this economic downturn. They tighten up operations, things like that. But all of a sudden, demand remained kind of high, right? Even throughout this economic dip. And there's still a huge demand on the employer side to bring employees back into the organization. Well, where do they find them? Right? You and I are in one of those places. We're the breeding ground for new employees, right? We're creating future professionals in business, particularly you and I are both business professors. But I do have to say, not only business students go into these businesses, right? This is for any concentration, anything like that, because everything is a business, right? Every value proposition that you deliver is a business, and students who deliver that value proposition may come from some specialty field like science, engineering, medicine, literature, anything like that, right? But still, there's always this value proposition. So it's always businesses that are hiring them. Outside of that, it's going to be the other two sectors are government and nonprofit, obviously. But a lot of the same rules apply there. So anyway, that's what we're talking about right now. We're talking about small private business. We're talking about large private/public business. When I say public, I mean public companies that are traded openly, that are owned by the public. So that's what we need to go over, right? You think we need to break it down any further than that?
No, and I think you're probably going to have majority of the knowledge when it comes to small and large companies and their hiring process, simply because, like I said, I came right out of college, went right into teaching. My wife left college, went right into working for the government. Mm-hmm. And so my experience with the small and large companies outside of, when I say small, I'm talking about like small podunk town, mom and pop shop companies from where I'm from. That's not really like the professional job. It's just I needed a summer gig or something like that. Mm-hmm. But my experience comes from those niche areas. So I may have some stuff to include in that for that specific reason, because some listeners may want to work in those areas. But the vast majority of them are definitely going to be in the large and small company side of it. So I think that's very valuable.
Well, I can tell you another thing. So I came from a background that had no experience in this. Learning this stuff was so shocking to me. It really helped me understand how society works in terms of creating opportunities for yourself, right? Sometimes they're kind of baked into the system, that if you go through the system the right way, and oftentimes that creates a misimpression too, right? About if I go through the system in this way, that it will definitely create an opportunity for me. And that's not always the case. And not being from a background that had a lot of exposure to how you get jobs and how you create opportunities and stuff like that. So my background is, I went from college to law school, and then I did a couple of legal jobs. After that, I went into the military for about 5 years, and then I got out and I went back to business school. And honestly, the combination of what I saw during the career help resource stuff during law school, and then, the training that they gave us in the military about when you're getting out and stuff, which I got to admit was pretty good. But my real dose of reality was when I went to business school. The way it was used as a recruiting platform, talking to the HR folks and understanding what businesses are looking for, and really getting into. And then after that, luckily, when I joined GGC, I was at our current college, I was able to honestly propose and teach a course for the last 6-7 years that was nothing but professionalism. But the part that had the absolute most impact, I believe, career-wise, was helping people understand what it means to create an opportunity for itself. And engulfed in that was understanding how these large and small companies hire. So I've done a lot of research on this. I've actually done a lot of writing on it. Right. So that being said, a lot of the stuff I'm throwing out there may be common knowledge. At this point, I have no idea, because, some students would know it and some students wouldn't. And I found myself in the group that didn't know it. But when I went to business school, there was this whole group of students from parents with professional positions and things like that who did know it. Right. So anyway, that being said, I need you to keep me in line, and, while I'm gabbing on about this stuff, make sure I don't just, talk about something that isn't commonly understood, or just try to beat something to death that is commonly understood. Type scenario.
I've lost all figuring out of what's commonly understood and everything. So I don't know how much help I'm going to be there, but okay. So we've referenced that the main focus of this is going to be small and large companies. Really quickly, let's just again, we need to make sure we understand what common knowledge is. Define what we mean by small and large companies. Like, what is this? What makes up a small company? What makes up a large company?
Okay. A large company is generally going to be one of your Fortune 1000 companies. That's going to be a public company or a private company. Public companies' stock is sold publicly, right? It's registered with the Securities Exchange Commission, so you can actually buy that stock on the public market somewhere. A private company is going to be one that is not. All right, it's not publicly sold in the market. A small company is going to be your local mom and pop, up to maybe couple hundred employees. I would say that all falls in the realm of small business. Everything above that, whether it's private or public, is we're grouping into big business, right? They're gonna have a lot of revenue. They're gonna have a lot of employees. They're gonna have a lot going on, and they're generally gonna have dedicated human resources departments, groups that are dedicated nothing but for bringing in or training or maintaining certifications on or developing their employee workforce. Now we're focusing on what do you do to bring them in, right? So in that small company, right, how do they bring in employees? In the larger company, how do they bring in employees? So that's the definition I'm working with. All right.
Yeah, and that's just the same for me.
Okay. So we've already talked about, but before we do that, let's hit for a second these specialty groups, right? We got nonprofit and public sector, which is the government, right? Your wife's in government. Technically, we're in government because we're at a state school, right? How do they hire?
So typically, they have to. I think it's by law. Like they have to publish their job openings on a public forum, so the internet. I think it's what U.S. jobs if you're looking for federal, and then the state has different things. Colleges have different ones, so the colleges have their own independent website, their own website, but it goes through the state, and that's where they have to publish it. Even if they're planning on hiring from within, they still have to publish it. And so that's typically where you go for those. And like I said, that's very different than what we're going to be talking about with the small and the large, because a lot of it is centered around the internet and going out and finding them.
So the government side, you can actually sit behind your computer and apply to these jobs, find out about these jobs, no problem, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's super easy. That's how I did it. I mean, I just did a Google search.
Well, so that is the point of departure for us then in talking about the other sector jobs. Because statistically, of the private business jobs in the United States, about 70 some odd percent, somewhere between 70 and 80% of jobs created in the United States every year are never listed publicly. Meaning you as an individual who does an internet search will never learn about these positions. Isn't that crazy?
That number's so high to me because, it's looking back even in college, like all I ever did was the Google search.
And that's what I have to get my students out of. I'm like, if you sit behind a computer and just send out your resume, you are competing for, at best, 1 out of every 3 jobs that are publicly posted. At best, right? Or 1 out of every 3 jobs that is created out there in the private sector.
In the public.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? I mean, so anyway, so what we need to do is open up, where's that other 70% coming from? Where's it's going? And the reason we kind of broke this into small business and big business is this. Big businesses basically hire 2 groups of people. New hires without experience in a given area. Okay. And granted, we're focusing.
Which means that they're coming. That means that they're just coming from college, right?
Right. And we're focusing on professional service providers, right? There's labor level is a little bit different, right? You go through all sorts of things like staffing firms, just, public announcements, trying to get people to hire in HR departments, spend a lot of time hiring labor level employees type thing. But if you're going to college, right, you're coming out as a professional services level provider. So your large companies hire these individuals new. They don't have a ton of skill. They might have had an internship or whatever in the area, and they may have majored in the area, but they are not seasoned professionals. Okay. Those are new hires, right? The lateral transfers, as we call them, those are people with 2 to 7 years experience. All right. And I say 2 to 7 because that's what you always see on job postings. Pick any large company you want to and Google that company now, a job for that company. Everything is going to be 2 to 7 years experience. It's just a standard. And you're like, wait a second. I'm a marketer, I'm a finance person, I'm an accountant. How am I going to get a job with one of these companies if there are no jobs listed without 2 to 7 years experience, and I don't have 2 to 7 years experience, right? Well, therein lies the trick, right? Most, at least Fortune 500 companies, have these fully developed internship programs. During summers, they'll bring in hundreds of interns from colleges across the United States into their internship programs. These students, they don't do a ton of work. They're exposed to things more than that, right? It's more of an exposure element than a just sit down and doing the work. But over that 12-week summer, 10-week summer, or whatever, they get to see different areas. They get to be assessed. They get to take part in company culture. At the end of the internship, it is almost a 100% certainty that they're going to get a job offer. Like, there'll be a small percentage that does not, just because there was a personality fit and it was obvious they probably don't want to work there anyway. But of that group, so if you are part of one of these college internship programs with a company, you have effectively started yourself off in a professional career with that company. Most people don't realize.
So what you're saying is internships are fairly important.
Yes. As a matter of fact, if you want to be if you want to be with Amazon, you want to be with Google, you want to be with Facebook, you want to be with Microsoft, you want to be with Ford, you want to be with Home Depot, you want to be UPS, Delta, whatever, right? You want to be with these Fortune 500s. As a recent graduate in a professional capacity, you would better do an internship with them while you're in college. If you don't, the odds of you getting on with them depends 100% on you knowing someone, because they will not be publicly listing positions for someone with your skill set.
I think it's fair to say, too, in this situation, because I'm pretty sure there's probably listeners going, well, my parents didn't go through that, or I know somebody who did it this way, or we're talking about just the average. We're talking about what majority are going to do. We're not talking about the outliers. And as you said, 70% of them are not publicly displayed or published. So we're really talking about that 70, not the 30% that may have done it in a different manner.
Well, you bring up a great point. The hiring market and the way it happens changes every day, usually because of technology changes. Because your parents did it differently, honestly, so much has changed just in the last 5 years, much less the last 10, 15, 20, that type of thing. In the last 20 years, right, 20 years ago, there were a few thousand recruiters, what are commonly called as headhunters, right, for companies that out there. Now there's over 40,000 people who do that for a living. Companies are listing things in different ways. This idea of internal company job board, right, or company job board, or listing positions in newspapers, things like that, it's changed so much, right? So that's one reason you're going to have a huge difference, right? And you're going to know people who got it in a different way. But the future of the market going forward, the changes in technology and how companies are hiring in this crazy world we're living in now, it's important that you recognize, number one, Fortune 500 companies, internship is everything. Can you still get in as a recent graduate hire? Yes, but it's based almost exclusively on knowing someone. And oftentimes that networking, right, still begins with an internship before it begins with a full-time job, right? So keep that in mind with your large companies. Internship is everything. Number two will still be networking always, right? Yeah. The other option is to go the route of saying, well, maybe I go work for a different company, a smaller company, and get the experience required. Get 2 to 7 years experience in that field, and then I go work for a big company. But that's bringing someone in as a lateral transfer, right? And most companies now with their lateral transfers, now, if you Google any of these large companies and you look for a job in whatever professional field you're in, you'll see a lot of postings for people with experience, 2 to 7 years in that field. The funny part is, it's not the company actually listing these job postings anymore. Predominantly, and this is just with your large companies, right? Your Fortune 1000 and your private companies, let's say with $1 billion of revenue annually, right? There's 15 of those in downtown Atlanta, okay? they contract with what we call recruiters. And we have a completely different episode on recruiters, right? We'll actually probably air that next time. But the recruiters are contracted to find these individuals for the company, find candidates for the company. It used to be just for executive positions, but now it's for every professional position within the company. Any lateral transfer with 2 to 7 years experience, the number one way you're going to get an opportunity is to get found by a recruiter. And it's the recruiters who are doing the direct spearfishing for you on LinkedIn. It's the recruiters who are posting the opportunities on Indeed, Simply Hired, Monster, LinkedIn again, these different job posting platforms. So ultimately, if you want to go to work for a big company, you've really got a couple of options. You either get the internship or network like crazy with someone there to get your foot in the door. Best shot is internship, or you take a job that will give you the 2 to 7 years experience you need to, again, get in the door by applying directly to the company or applying to the company through a recruiter. So that's big company. You can see it's a mess, right?
I think the best example, at least from my world, because again, I'm in the accounting industry. I teach accounting. Is the accounting firms. Like, I think that's the best example of what you're talking about. So those who are accounting majors who listen to the podcast, so one of you probably, you may know this already, and that is the best way to get on with a Big Four, which, again, the larger companies that we're referring to from an accounting standpoint would be the Big Four. So you got KPMG, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Deloitte, and Ernst & Young. Mm-hmm. So the best way to get hired onto one of those companies is to go through the internship program, a summer internship program that typically leads to, like you said, a position being offered to you upon graduating with your master's or going through and getting your CPA or whatever that may entail. But it's already given to you, assuming you do the good job and it works for you. That's a larger company. Now, if you're talking about smaller companies, which are typically considered the non-Big Four, which those are even large in their own right, too. Some of them are still large in their own right. They go through it a little bit differently, but they also have internships as well. Mm-hmm. So to put this in perspective of like an example, like you were saying, larger ones, that's going to be your accounting Big Four. They do exactly what you talk about. Mm-hmm. Like they're doing exactly that. And even to there are larger companies out there that when they're looking for higher up executives in the accounting field, when you're talking about the level of experience that they have, not only do they require so many years of experience, so like, you know, I looked at one time, not only do they look for like 10 years of experience in accounting, they look at experience specific to Big Four companies, mm-hmm. not anything outside the Big Four, because they want that experience, that high level of experience that you get with the Big Four. But again, the way to get that, which again, 10 years, you're probably going to move up fairly high. The only way to get there is to start there through your internship. Mm-hmm. So it's very valid what you're saying. And,
you know, there's one interesting thing though. These big companies we're talking about, right? Fortune 1000, $1 billion annual revenue, they make up 40% of the total hiring of new hires in the United States. 40%. There's still 60% of new hires out there that get hired in other places. In the thousands and thousands and thousands of small, medium-sized businesses that exist out there. So how do you get hired at a small, medium-sized business? Well, they're going to use some of your more traditional methods. Number one, networking. Most of these companies, and I've talked to so many employers over the past few years, you know, as I run the internship program out of college currently, they tend to ask their current employees or current connections with the business, do you know anybody for this position? People get hired based upon somebody in the business recommending them. So that's why networking comes in so huge. I told you my first job in a law firm was like that. It was just that easy. I was the only person who interviewed for the job.
So tell me this, how many emails have you received as a faculty that's from some small business around the area that says, hey, we have this position open and we're looking for a student or a graduating senior in this area. Do you know of any? Please let us know, or please give this out to them. I mean, that's a perfect example of what you're just saying.
If I've received one, I've received 1,000.
And yeah, I mean, I get them
don't
pretty
get me
much
wrong.
weekly.
I probably see more than other people because I do run the internship program.
Yeah.
But so many companies looking for a direct referral of somebody. And I can't tell you how many people I've referred to positions. Usually it's internships, right? They come out initially wanting interns. How many people I've referred, they're the only person that interviews. They're the only person that applies. They're the only person that interviews, and they get the job. And the company doesn't look any further, right? So that level of networking is everything, okay? Sure. So that's number one with small companies. They use their network, okay? My wife owns a small business. That's how they've hired. But the second method is using some of the newer age methods. Using your job boards like Indeed, Simply Hired, Monster, or more industry-specific job boards, and posting a position towards a target market, right? Some job boards, a very good job board for new hires with no experience, are the job boards at schools. You go directly to the schools' career development centers and post on their internal job boards, right? We tend to use a program called Handshake. It's one of the biggest in the U.S. I think another one is Ripple Match, I believe, is one of the other big ones. But there are several, right, internal job boards that are specifically focused on schools. Okay, so they're going to use some of these newer methods like that. They'll also use local job boards. They'll even put things in the local newspaper still, right? That hasn't gone anywhere. But these particularly, the things you put in the newspaper, the things you put on public job boards tend to require somebody with a certain level of experience and skill set. Okay, still some of that 2 to 7 year stuff. The stuff you list at schools tends to be focused just on someone with a degree, right? Or someone with an interest in something like this. And so they're trying to generate a cross-discipline school of potential talent to bring into the company. So.
Yeah, and I will say too, most colleges, especially, and I'm speaking on behalf of the business schools of most colleges, they have probably some board of directors or some kind of board of business leaders within the community. So they've already created this network mesh out there to bring those kind of openings, those job news openings, into the college to help the students. I mean, that's a great way.
Mm-hmm.
I know, like I said, our school does that.
So you've got those two main ways that apply most broadly, right? You got your large businesses that, get into the formal internship programs, go from there, network like crazy with anyone who can get you into that program as a new hire. Otherwise, get the skills to get in there as a lateral transfer. For most people in the United States, you're not going to go to a big company. You're going to go to a small, medium-sized company. Number one is networking, always and will always be. There's nothing going to replace that, right? There's too much of a connection between the individual employee in the business and the future of the company and who they bring in and stuff like that. So, right, they don't have a dedicated HR department that's handling all that. Everybody's in that boat together. And then next is, like I say, do what we all do. Look at the job openings, right? Look at the job boards. If you're in school, take advantage of your resources. If you're out of school, look at the other job boards that you have access to and go that route. But one thing that's constant among both of them, network, right? That's going to be everything. Yep. And, we can't.
Well, I think that leads us to our next.
Oh, I was just going to say one more thing. And we can't talk to you specifically about all the niche industries. Education, highly different, right? You get tons of placements through school, right? There's engineering, there's cooperative programs, and then in medicine, as crazy as that is, right? That has a very specific pipeline for how you get placements in hospitals for your residencies and whatnot. So you're going to have specific programs that are different than others. But what we're saying is, if you look at what you're studying in school as a value proposition and it's got to be delivered to the public, there's going to be companies out there that deliver that. You need to place yourself in the best position possible to, once again, get your foot in the door in these companies that are delivering whatever value proposition you're into, right? So that being said, that's our disclaimer, right? We can't cover everything, but we're trying to give you a high-level overview of how the system works.
Yes, a 30,000-foot view.
Yeah.
What I was going to say earlier was I think that was a great transition into our last question, which is what are some things that listeners can do to become more attractive to these companies they want to get hired on? And again, we're talking about it from, again, both a small and a large company side. The first thing that came to my mind, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is I guess this is more of an opinion of mine, but I do feel like there is value in the choice of college when it comes to becoming hired on in a large company and a small company. Because if you're talking about like a small university or small college in a rural part of the state, they're probably not going to be as connected with large companies as they are small companies, because again, just the area that they're in, you're dealing with, again, the business schools, what I'm specifically referring to. And so you're going to have more connections with small to mid-sized companies versus if you go to a large university in a large city. So for instance, Georgia State, which is in Atlanta for us, they're probably going to have more contacts and networking with large corporations because they're headquartered in Atlanta and you have that connection with them. That's to me is one of the things I think it's just kind of a trick. It's not necessarily like something that is going to change the way you do things. It's going to make you look more attractive, but it's going to put your foot in the door in the better place, depending on if you want the small or the large. If you want the large, then you're probably going to go to a larger city. If you want a small, then you can pretty much go anywhere you want, because they're going to have that same net casted just in a wider view.
I'm with you on that one. That's number one, hands down.
Okay.
Number two, I'd say, it doesn't matter if you're in school. It doesn't matter if you haven't ever done any school. Whether you're going for a lateral transfer position or a new hire position, you will never be prejudiced by having experience or skill. So there are so many ways to acquire skills and experience in a given area. Volunteering, starting your own thing, trying to do some contract gig work with people, through anything from Fiverr to Simply Hired or something like that, right? Or Odesk or whatever it's called now. Some of these things can give you the experience. Lots of times it's a skill set thing, right? I'm not a big fan of these certifications and stuff like that, right? I'm more of a fan of proof of work. Do some projects, work on something, develop a skill set on your own. Use YouTube, use LinkedIn Learning, use some of these other programs that will teach you how to do anything so you can validly not only state that you have that skill, but you can actually do a little project on your own and show you have that skill, okay? Show you have that ability. If you're a creative writer, write some stuff. Put it there on the internet somewhere where you can link to it and reference it so people can see your abilities, that type of thing. So that's my number two, right after what you said. You got to work to build those competencies, and that is going to help you a great deal in terms of, creating opportunity for yourself.
Well, I will pick the low-hanging fruit here. I would argue this is number one, and I figured, why not? It's there. Might as well use it. Networking.
Yeah.
I mean, networking.
Yeah.
And this has to go with, this is kind of piggybacking on the choice of college because, again, the college creates this networking ability. So the bigger the college, the bigger the network. The bigger the network net, I guess you would say, casts in bigger colleges. So you have more opportunity to network with different people and different size companies. That is in and of itself big from a college perspective, but also from an individual perspective, being able to go out there and network and effectively network. And we actually have a episode specifically towards that. But to be able to just get those connections, that's going to help you in small and large. It's going to lead to potential jobs in smalls and potential internships in large.
Absolutely. If you just take those three elements we just talked about, right, you're going to do more than 90% of the populace. You're going to create opportunities for yourself, period.
Yep.
And it starts with helping to understand where you're going, big company, small company, private company, public company, industry-specific niche career type thing. Figure out exactly how that industry works. Probably going to fall somewhere into what we've described already. And then, like I say, use those tips and techniques and you will do better than others in your exact same position.
Well, this has been a good show. I've enjoyed it. I've learned some stuff again because I'm outside of the private public companies. I'm in the governmental. We're both in the governmental.
Yeah.
So this is something new for me. But I've enjoyed it. You got any parting words before we head out?
Yep. Guys, our website is awesome. Check it out. New episodes, social media, all that good stuff. Just let us know what you want to hear about because we're here for you.
Yep. Well, we hope you enjoyed it. We hope to see you next time. Until then, goodbye.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Reschool'd podcast. Be sure to head over to reschool'd.com for news and other information on things we're getting into.